I just want to get you.
Oh, okay. Good morning. If you see me or hear me, do something so I know you are there.
Do you have like a slide or anything like that?
Huh?
A slide?
So I'm gonna wait about few minutes, make sure everybody is here. I think we're missing few people. So give me about few minutes and we go from there. Meanwhile, if you have a zip form, probably you want to log into your zip form and pull up the lease contract and go from there. Also, I'm gonna go over the application if you want to pull that up. Uh, Also, if you want to take a look at the lease listing, at the end, I'm gonna go over that, and there's gonna be other forms. For those of you that are here, I'm gonna give you a copy. For the people that are online, I'm gonna have a copy and we can go over. Again, give me about 5 minutes. I want to make sure everybody's here. I know we are running late. My apologies.
Is there anything on the screen?
You know what? Good morning. Sorry, everyone, for the late start. I'm gonna try to go over as many things as possible. Some of you guys might have done one or two leads before. Some of you have never done it. You're gonna be working with both tenants and landlords. And there are certain things that, as far as the law goes, you need to be familiar with laws, and I highly recommend, if you're not familiar with all the rules and laws, you work with a mentor or somebody that familiar. There are certain questions that you cannot ask, so always keep in mind that normal questions that they might sound just random, it might not be illegal to ask. When you go to see the landlord, the owner, you have to make sure you collect enough information. So later on, it does not become an issue. So with that said, I'm gonna, can you go on that, can you show that? Where do you find that page? This, okay, this is, I gave you a copy, and then people on Zoom gonna be able to see this. Laura, can you give them a copy?
Yeah, one
Okay.
Is it good? You got everything?
So you're gonna get it in a minute. So basically, I thought I'd create a sheet of items that you might want to ask the tenant and set of questions that you're gonna ask the landlord. So usually there's certain, there's standard question that when somebody calls and say, hey, I'm interested in leasing your unit, you're gonna ask them a few questions, and there are certain questions or certain instruction that you're going to tell the tenant to follow when they're doing the application. These are more or less some of the items. When you are talking to the tenant, you're gonna ask them, well, when are you anticipating moving in? They might call. I have people that come and say, well, I'm not talking about December 1st. I'm thinking, I'm looking and I'm ready to move in January 1st. And maybe January 1st is too far, and the landlord doesn't even want to talk about January 1st. They want to rent it right away. So, make sure that you're having a conversation with the person that's calling to rent, so you get the full information. So you go in with full. You know what? One of those issues that concern everyone is pets. And as you know, we have people that they have pets for not for fun, but it's an emotional support animal, whatever. So there are certain rules and laws that you have to follow. Not only that, some condos, if you're renting out a condo, there might be a certain restriction in the CCNR and the bylaws about having a dog, or even if they allow dogs, maybe they say up to 25 pounds. So there are certain things, or the owner might not want a dog at all because they have this nice, expensive hardwood floor, and they're afraid that the dog or any other pet that they have, it might scratch it. So there are certain things that you have to learn how to go around, loop, or find a way to, follow the law, and then at the same time, please the landlord. So, these are things that you have to learn how to kind of maneuver around. So personally, when I put a property for rent, I never exclude pets. I never say no dogs, because I know that, no, doesn't matter if I say no, still they're gonna find a loophole or gonna get a doctor note saying, hey, it's an emotional support animal, and they're gonna make me do it. So I don't even go there. So that does not even make sense. I let the landlord know there's a good chance that you're gonna end up with a tenant that may have a pet. So always that's gonna be there, and different people deal with it differently. So this is something to watch out for. You know what? As far as you want to know how many people are going to be living in the unit. You cannot discriminate, but at the same time, a lot of landlords, they want to know how much of a wear and tear going to be on the unit. At the same time, if the landlord is paying for the utilities like water, they want to know really if there's 7 people living in a 2 bedroom, how much of water they're going to use or how much wear and tear is going to be on their property. So, but at the same time, you have to be very careful that you don't cross a line, that you're discriminating regarding their age, their race, or anything else. So this is something that you have to watch out for. In that regard, a lot of people, they don't know how to fill up an application. So some people, they think, well, since they're filling out the application, only their name gonna go there. But if you look carefully on the application, it also says who else gonna be living on the property. A lot of times when I'm working closely with tenants, I tell them, listen, even if you have a step, if you join custody with your wife and your son is going away to university and they're gonna come here every 2 days in a month. They're not really here. They're only gonna be here 2 days in a month, maybe 2 weeks for the holiday. I always tell them, listen, put their name on the lease and explain to the landlord why you don't want to be in a situation that, your son decides to come, stay there for more than 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden the landlord say, hey, you're breaking the lease because the person that you're living in there, it's not on the lease contract and you're gonna have an issue. But that's why I always ask him, hey, I try to ask those questions, is there gonna be anybody else? You have a son, daughter, or anybody else, or you have a mother. Sometimes they have people that have their mother wants to stay with them. So, or so I usually tend to give suggest to my clients, the tenant, to put their name on the contract to be on the safe side. When I type up a lease contract and I take the information from the application, doesn't matter how old is the kid. If it's a year old or 20 years old, I put their name and the relationship. So I say, Jonathan, in parentheses, son, Betty, in parentheses, daughter, or the wife, or the husband, or the spouse. So every individual that's going to occupy the property, I put that on the lease contract. So later on, the landlord cannot harass. Make sense?
Yeah, but if they're older than 18, will the landlord check for 315 and stuff like that?
We're gonna get that.
So,
Okay.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Why is it so important for the son, the son to put the name on the son? They're coming every 2 weeks. That's not really a person living. I mean, they are, but
Think about it. I think you need to think about your question. And then I come back to it. Because you're telling me that if they're gonna come and live each month, they're gonna be there for 2 weeks.
no, they're gonna be there one time every 6 months.
Doesn't matter. If you know what, there are certain laws that if somebody comes and lives with you for more than certain days, then they become a tenant.
Oh, is that what it is?
Now, also, if somebody that is living there starts paying rent and you start accepting checks from that individual, they also become your tenant.
Oh, that's what.
So there are a lot of different laws and rules that landlord might not know that when they're starting to accept checks. So let's say you are my tenant and I see Joseph send me checks. If I start seeing a check coming from Glenn, I have to question, how come Glenn is writing me a check?
Oh, I see.
Did you guys move in together? Or is there somebody else? So if the name of if that person is not on the lease and writing me a check, I need to question that. Guys, you pay attention? So if the name of the person that writing a check, that person doesn't live on that property, as a landlord, I would question, who is this that writing a check for rent?
So I thought that was a good question.
Make sense? Good, okay. So now I have to provide, so you know what, from the get-go, when you starting to work with a tenant, you have to let them know what are the, foreseeable items that they need to provide. And it's most landlord, 90% of the time ask for the same things. They're gonna ask for the application, right? They're gonna ask for a credit report. I personally use rent-free. Why? Because it not only that it runs the credit, but also, well, of course, it's on the MLS and the MLS is working with them. But beside that, they also do eviction and criminal. And I want to know if that tenant had ever a criminal or eviction. So these are essential things. And when I go and I'm getting a listing and I tell the landlord, listen, when I'm going to be representing you and work for you, my job going to be to vet the tenant. So for me to be able to get the full information about that applicant is important where I'm getting that credit report. A lot of people, they say, hey, my FICO score is 700 or 695 with Credit Karma. I never accept a third party. I never want to see just 4-line FICO score. I want to see a 2-year, when I run the credit report, I want to see what's going on. What accounts they have, which credit cards they have. Do they have a mortgage? Because a lot of times when I run the full report, besides running something like Credit Karma or something like that, that just gives you a couple lines, but it gives me the detail. I get to know what are these people about. What type of, and even if they have instead of 700, if they have a 650, I want to know why. Was it because of a hospital bill or because they didn't pay their last landlord? So when you get the full detailed report and you see that they were late on this credit card or on that car payment, you get a better sense of what this person is about. And sometimes landlords, they want to see a 700 FICO score. But sometimes if I have that, and I can prove that the reason that their FICO score dropped was because of the medical bill that they couldn't pay, then I can help the applicant, the tenant, in getting their application accepted, and then I have the right tools to be able to explain to the landlord. Make sense?
How can you get the criminal record?
That's part of the thing. When they pay, rent-free does all this for you.
Rent-free.
Rent-free is a company that runs credit.
And then you get the full information like background.
Yeah. So the other good thing about rent-free that we use, whereas we send them the link. So there's two things about rent-free. First of all, you can choose that because rent-free does the application, and the credit report. Now the application, it can be done in a form you can choose. So the application would be in the form of a car form. So it would be the same application that it's on zip form. What rent-free has done, they adopted that you can either choose their application, or if the application would be changed into a zip form format, the same thing that you see on the zip form. So that's one good thing that they do that. And second, you can send people just to screen their application, and that's free. You can just send them a link, or you can send them a link that they can go on, pay $40, and you don't have to get the client's social security, and you don't have to deal with any liability of privacy. So that's another thing that I try to relieve for myself. I say, hey, go online, put your information, put your social security, pay for it, and then once done, I get a copy back.
So rent-free really does my work, that the lease agreement.
It doesn't do the lease agreement, it does the application and credit report.
Or application and credit.
But that's the beginning part.
Application, which application?
You know what? Can you scroll down? Go down. No. Okay, right here. You see,
That's what rent-free does?
no, this is the application that you see on zip form. That's what you send to your client to get their application, right? Just what is the application? It's just the basic information about the tenant, right?
And then rent-free does that.
Yeah, so rent-free has the same exact one. So when if you go and you choose car form, it would, when it's doing that, when you receive a copy of the application, it would be in this format. Make sense? Okay, okay,
My question is,
yeah,
how we are, I mean, I sent this application to the potential tenant. Uh, How is connected to my email, that application?
okay, great, because you have to open an account with Rent-Free. And you're sending you a link, so whatever they do is gonna come to your, something even better. If you want something even more interesting, if you connect your car form to your Rent-Free, then a copy of the credit report would also go to your car form, to your car, your transaction on your car form. So it would do that, they are working together, so it's, but as soon as they complete it, you're gonna get you get either a notification and you can go log into Rent-Free and be able to look at their application, their credit report, their eviction, their criminal, all that gonna be there. Okay? Now, moving forward, so some of the stuff that I usually, when I say I, because right now I'm partnered with Albert, so the two of us, when we do leases, we are asking for, of course, the application, the credit report, proof of current employment, which would be a paycheck stub. So I want to see a paycheck stub with the date of the, something in the last 2 weeks, because even if you're getting bi-weekly, there should be a paycheck stub in the last 2 weeks, right? Not only that, I want to see, usually if it's a bigger company, also they show on the side year to date. So it would tell me how much they've been making from the beginning of the year, and or it would just give me, because there are two things. We want to make sure that they're employed right now, and we want to verify how much are they making. Can they really afford this? Third thing would be a bank statement, the last 3 months of bank statement. We want to see if continuously they've been having that money deposit in their account. And realistically, do they have enough money for the deposit? If we're gonna ask for the first month, and a security deposit of 1 month or 2 months, do they have that amount in their bank statement? And if not, where are they gonna get it from? So these are legit information, you understand how strong of a tenant you have. And I had a conversation with an agent in the office yesterday, and she said, I'm afraid that I would get a tenant and they start not paying, and then I'm not gonna get paid. I'm gonna have an issue with the tenant. Listen, if you have somebody with good credit, when you have somebody that is employed right now, somebody that's showing sufficient amount of money in their account, the possibility of them trying to play game is very minimal, and sometimes if they want to do it, there's no way stopping them. But most people, they're afraid of screwing their credit, because the credit is the same one. They don't want their credit to be damaged. Why? Because if they want to go buy a car, all of a sudden, instead of a 3% interest, they have to pay 7%. Nowadays, instead of a 7%, they're going to be paying 14% interest in buying a car. So it's not beneficial for anyone to create an issue or ruin their own credit by not paying rent or getting into those evictions, unless they don't care. But you know what? Our job is to do our best to avoid any issues later. And that's why, when I'm telling you, ask for the paycheck stuff. And sometimes you want to make sure that whoever did the application and you got their application, it's them. So that's why you ask for a picture ID. You want to make sure that the person that's doing the application and the person that you run their credit is the same person. It's not their brother or somebody else. So always ask for a picture ID. Next, so we talked about the 3 months bank statement.
Joe, sorry, you said that you get the ID to match the application.
Yeah,
That's what you said. Right?
yeah. All right. Well, also to further investigate, to make sure to get the tenant, you want to make sure that you are getting there. From the get-go, you can ask them, listen, by any chance, do you have a letter of recommendation from your current landlord? you know. We can always ask him. So these are some of the stuff that you can prepare your clients, ahead of the stuff, or you create that package. Or if there is an issue, you can start working on it from, if they don't have a 700 FICO score, you can start knowing how to deal with that. Or if they are working cash, let's say, hey, I work cash. Or I'm self-employed. So whatever the situation is, it's before you start wasting your time even showing him properties, you need to know what the status and how you come back. Just like you're buying a house, you're gonna help somebody, you check to see if they can get a loan. Same situation. Let's say, well, in that case, let's say somebody is not getting a paycheck step. So instead, we're gonna ask for bank statement to see there's money coming in. Can you show me on your bank statement that somehow you're getting paid if they cannot give me a paycheck step? And to see that they are been having an income, or if their business is profitable, I might ask for their tax return. Make sense so far? So there are different ways that you can kind of make sure that those people you vet them to make sure that, even if you're representing the landlord, a lot of times I get a lot of landlords that they work with me, and at the end of the day, they tell me, Joe, you make a decision. Of course, I tell them, hey, I don't make decision on your behalf. I don't want to take any responsibility, but they trust what basically they're telling me, Joe, we trust you. You want to make sure that you're renting this as you're renting your own, and you take all the steps to make sure that I don't get stuck with somebody that's going to be in trouble. Make sense so far?
Question.
Yeah.
The tenant that's applying for it is married, so the credit score is 780, say.
Uh-huh.
The husband is 560 or 420. Right.
There's a lot of things that I look at. I look at to see why. I look to see how much is the wife making, how much is the husband making. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna look at, but I would still run both of them. And the question is, when the husband has a 750 FICO score or vice versa, one spouse has high FICO score and the other spouse has a low FICO score. So you know what? A lot of times, listen,
I think we can
situation changes time to time, landlords change. Let's say if you are a desperate landlord, if you're not in the best place in town, let's say you're in not the best area, the way of thinking, the way you vet people, the way you do all that is totally different. So if you are in a really bad neighborhood that the rent is 1,500, and you know what type of a tenant are you expecting to have? Are you gonna have a CEO go fill up an application, or somebody that really it's a day by day? So there's a lot of different things that go into the decision making of the landlord or you, and you have to. Depends on other factors. Make sense? All right. Also, not only that, you can learn through their last landlord, you can from their employer. What is this person still working with you? So there are different ways of making sure that this is the right thing. Now, moving on to the.
Before you move in, can I just actually?
Yeah.
You want to steal 3 minutes of you and then. Can I just steal 3 minutes of you? Just to say. Actually, that's not planned, but I'm gonna just hijack. Look.
Before that, Alper, he'd been working, we were working together, and together maybe in the last year, we have done maybe about 20 odd.
For the last 3 years, I think we did more than 60.
60 of them. So he's very versed with it.
Sorry, it's a long class, so Joe will go with the contract, but just to say, so the lease, tenants are tenants. It's like I always said, buyers are liars. Tenants are tenants. They will say they will do everything, and then they will ghost you. They will send documents that are not true. So basically, the lease is important thing is you in time, when you do so much leases, you just start learning people. You just start reading people, and this is very important. I wasn't the same person like 2 years ago. Leases are really just you start learning people. So all these documents, they can say 2 weeks ago, I had a tenant with a perfect credit score with a perfect attorney job. She's moving in, everything was great, right? Everything was fake. Fake bank statements, fake credit scores, fake employment. Actually, even look, we are writing here that name the contracting for your current resident, your current employer. They will give you a number of someone that's actually not her employer. We are just requesting it just to double check. I never, or mostly I never called the employer. They gave the number of me. I checked their employer. I checked the name from Google. I found the company. I called the company. I reached out. 2 weeks ago, I called an employer, and actually that was a law firm that she's have some guts to put herself as an attorney that she's not being a part of. So she's in legal trouble right now. That's another story. But you have to learn how to read the tenants. You have to check all the documents, and then in time you will find out if there is something fishy, because nothing is perfect. They will do something wrong if there is something wrong, and then you have to start trusting your guts in this so much. That's how we do it actually. I mean,
Just to share something funny, somebody put reference their mom, so we decided to call the mom.
I mean, look,
Tell them the story.
yeah, I mean, I mean, he was staying with her mom. People are saying that I'm staying with my mom and I'm paying rent to my mom. And then you are calling, and then you say that, okay, I'm gonna call her, his mom, and then what? His mom gonna tell me something bad? You can't believe what people say. They do. They say that, oh, he's actually unresponsible and anything. He's paying
So
rent,
the
but
mom
it's-
actually told us that her son was not responsible and told us all this negative stuff about the son. So you know what? We thought that it's just, you know what, when and it was a little bit of an insistence of the landlord, say, hey, do that. And then we say, you know what, just to make the landlord happy, we're gonna call the mom. And funny enough, we call the mom, and the mom says, you know, you really want to rent a unit to my son? So it was funny the response that we got from the mom. So just to tell you, you never know who's gonna tell you what. And this is something that happened in the last 6 months.
Maybe
And,
mom
okay,
didn't want him to leave.
you know what, whatever it is, you take it with a grain of salt.
So then, yeah, so the complete thing is just request everything, check all these things, but
How do you check the bank statement?
they're sending you your
Yes,
bank
it-
statement. Or what?
No, how do you call the bank and confirm if the account?
No, it's not like that. Okay,
You
bank
know what, you
statements
do your best, but you know what, you get 3 months of rent, and bank statement, you know what? It's matter of experience, you know, you just,
You can hide, you can take all of it.
you know what, there's so much you can fake, but you cannot, you
No,
know
the,
what?
the thing is, you can, I mean, bank statement, faking bank statement, they can, it's a loss of job, but.
But
they
you
can
have
do
to
that.
understand that that's a fraud crime.
Yeah, and then you saw and then from how?
Yeah, you know what, those are, I don't wanna waste time, these
Yeah.
are things that doesn't happen, and it's a long class, so let's not go toward things that they are not every day. So when you're going to go get the listing, and you're gonna have, you have to ask certain question from the landlord. And reconfirm information. You know, let's say it's a condo, and because a lot of times, these are things that it doesn't even cross your mind. If it's a condo that you're getting a listing to rent, one of those questions, a lot of buildings, they have a move-in, move-out fee. So the tenant or the landlord has to pay $150, $200, or $300 to move in, and they have to, sometimes they even have a fee to set their name on the intercom. So there are different fees and charges that a condo HOA might have. So make sure that the things that you're gonna need, the information that you're gonna need from a condo is their move in, move out, and their bylaws. You need to give a copy of the bylaws to the tenant. The way I do that, when I get the CCNRs or the bylaws, I DocuSign that with some of the disclosures, and I have the tenant initial the bylaws. So I want to make sure that they have received it, and I have documentation that they have the bylaw. So this way, if they decide to go have a party at the pool, and the HOA and the bylaws say there's no partying by the pool, you have they sign that they received the bylaws and the CCR, they know that they have to follow the rules and regulation. And if they don't, you have the means of evicting them or giving them a notice, and they cannot tell you, oh, you know what? I didn't know I cannot party by the pool. So they have to read and they have to acknowledge that they received a copy of the bylaws for that condo. Make sense so far?
HOA sends the bylaws.
You ask, you deal with the landlord. These are the things that might take time, but you ask the landlord, go confirm, see how much is the move out, because if they bought the place 10 years ago and just recently they moving out, they don't even remember how much was the in and out fee. They might not even have a copy of the bylaws or the CCNR, so they have to contact their HOA, ask for those. So these are things that from the get-go, ask the landlord to go get it from the HOA and provide it to you. Make sense?
But this is also why a lot of landlords don't use an agent, because they can skip through that illegally. Remember Kelly? When I kept asking her where the bylaws, where the CCNRs,
You know what?
and she's like, I don't know.
You know what?
She came up.
If the landlord does not, because okay, as we're gonna go on the lease contract, you're gonna see there's a place on the lease contract that strictly asks you if this a, apartment, if it's a condo, and you cannot lie on the contract. So once you understand the reason that we're going over the lease contract, so you see what questions are being asked, and when you don't do it right, there's a legal issue. Okay? So for the landlord too, and you're part of it. Because you knew it and you didn't act on it. You knew that it's a condo. You knew that the condo has an HOA.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the landlords want to rent their rental rights because they don't have to deal with that. They do have to deal with that shit, but they don't.
Yeah, but you know what? That's something that they want. It's irrelevant.
Right.
We are dealing when we are renting it, but if they want to do something else, that's their problem. All right, moving on. Some of the other questions, you know what? Which utility services do you pay for, and what are the tenant's responsibilities? If it's a house, who pays for the pool service? Who pays for the gardening? Right? And you know what, if there's any other services, let's say if it's a high rise, if it's a condo, some of these high rises, they also part of their HOA fee covers electricity, cable. So, all of these, most condos, we know that they cover water, right? So, but beside that, you want to sort all of this out. So when you are communicating, when you are marketing this place, or you can ask them, what amenities does your building have? So make sure that when you are renting in a building, for the sake of being to market that property, does it have a pool? Does it have a spa? Does it have a jacuzzi? I was renting a property that I knew it has a spa. I didn't know where the hell it is. And the landlord didn't know. So it took me few days and asking few neighbors till I found out where that thing is. But nevertheless, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to always go and look at either units that were for sale or for lease in the past and read their remarks. And also their private remark that might give you some information that it would be useful that the landlord forgot to mention. Make sense? Moving on. So as far as a lot of stuff, besides how much is the unit gonna go for rent, also you wanna, from the get-go, understand where the landlord stands with the security deposit. Is it gonna be 1 month or 2 months? But one thing we know for sure, security deposit cannot be more than
3 months.
2 months if it's not furnished, and more than 3 months if it's furnished.
Not more than 2.
And the other fee that people say, okay, I'm gonna charge 2 months security deposit, and then I'm charging another 500 for pet deposit.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
You cannot charge the total for all your deposits cannot go over 2 months deposit.
So for furnished.
So when you say 2 months deposit, then you go back and say, I want $500 for a pet deposit, that you cannot do that. But you have to, but again, you need to check with the laws change all the time. You need to double check with the city But as far as I know, the total deposit cannot exceed 2 months. So, and usually what the landlord wants to secure themselves, and then not only that, the whole idea that I'm gonna have a $500 pet deposit, for me, I never do that. Why? Because when I said, here, give me $500 pet deposit, basically, I'm capping, that doesn't matter how much your pet gonna damage my property, the only maximum I'm gonna charge you is $500.
So when it's furnished, that means the couch and everything comes with
Yeah, furniture, yeah.
So that's 3 months deposit for
Yeah.
furnished, unfurnished is 2 months deposit.
Maximum.
So why did you say it cannot exceed more than 2 months?
Yeah, if it's not furnished, it cannot exceed more, so I said again, it cannot exceed 2 months if it's unfurnished, and it cannot exceed more than 3 months if it's furnished. Okay?
That's
But
Chinese.
Can you charge extra on the rent if they have that? So if the rent is 1,000 a month, can they pets are extra $100 a month per pet?
Yeah,
The rent.
yeah. It cannot be a deposit, but it can be a fee, yeah.
And then there's a 500 baby pet deposit.
And no, again, I told you, you have to listen. If you don't listen right now, you're gonna have questions over and over. I just said that the idea of an extra $500 deposit for pet does not make sense. Can you do it? Yes, but the total deposit that you're gonna collect cannot be more than 2 months. So what you're gonna do, if you still, your landlord says, hey, Joe, I really want to put a pet deposit, you say, okay, 2 months deposit, you subtract 500, and you say, okay, this is your deposit, and then here's a $500 for pet deposit. But I will never recommend a pet deposit to my landlord. Because that putting a cap on how much. And you know what? Let me tell you another thing. Doesn't matter if it was the dog that damaged the property or the tenant. No matter what, am I gonna go after the dog? Say, hey, the dog did, there's gonna be separate people. I would go under the tenant and say, hey, you're only liable for the wall damage, but all the scratches that the dog did, I'm gonna go after the dog. No, so it's a tenant. So it doesn't matter if he made he damaged the wall or scratched it, or the dog. He's responsible.
What is the personal guarantee?
Personal guarantee. You're coming from the commercial world, and in commercial world, there are personal guarantee, that's first. But in residential, we have guarantors. The guarantor is gonna be somebody that's not gonna be living there, but we're gonna vet them. We're gonna ask the same thing that we're asking the tenant, the person that's gonna guarantee. We're gonna ask the same thing from the guarantor.
If the credit score is something.
All the stuff like that. If let's say one of the situations that we were by UC downtown, and bunch of students, no credit or not good credit, not good income. So we had to get their parents to co-sign to be the guarantors. So we have those, and I'd be asking for the same exact thing.
Can you talk about pet insurance? Like who pays it? and-
Okay, pet insurance is under renter's insurance. So, and I'm gonna get there. It's one of the forms that I'm gonna do. So we're gonna talk about the renter's insurance.
Cause I'm guessing the pet deposit is just for the pet to stay. And then there's pet insurance for the damages.
Usually, so I answer that right now for you. Whenever, my rule is whenever there's a pet, I mandate the tenant to obtain a renter's insurance that does have the coverage for that type of pet. Because there are certain insurance companies that they say, okay, this canine, we're covering this type of a canine, but we are not covering this type of a canine. So when you look at the form, and there's a form for that, and in the contract, we said there's a pet and we mandate them and there's a form. On that form, it says that the tenant must obtain renter's insurance that has a coverage for that type of a pet. Make sense? We're gonna get there too. Let's move on. So, number, three is, how much is the security deposit? Number four, what personal property is included? So you know what, sometimes, so the contract, one of the things that most people miss in the lease contract, there is an area that are for personal property. Personal property, we're talking about the refrigerator, stove, microwave, and what have you. So there's the washer and dryer and stuff like that, that the landlord might keep in there. So the question to the landlord, what are the things that you're leaving behind? Let's say they haven't moved out yet, right? And they say, hey, as soon as we move out, you're gonna build market. So you're gonna ask them, what is it that you're gonna leave behind? Then there's a question, which one of these things are you gonna maintain, and what are the items that you are not gonna maintain? So for example, when I do my own properties, I never maintain washer and dryer. I say, hey, I'm giving you this washer and dryer, breaks, good luck, either can fix it or buy your own. That's the way I do it. Every landlord is different. Make sense? So you know what, they have different landlords with different things. There might be even in a contract something that, hey, any repair less than $300, it would be the tenant's responsibility. Because a lot of times you have this tenant that, oh, my light bulb is out, can you come and fix it? The landlord say, hey, it's a freaking light bulb, just go change it, you know? And some landlords, no, they say, okay, no problem, I will send someone to replace the light bulb. So always there are different ways of doing the contract, and there's different people do it differently. Now, number 4 and 5, we did number 6, form of payment. So right now, landlords, they expect, accept Zelle, or they accept through other Venmo and other things. So it's a good thing to know from the get-go. Or if you want to suggest it to the landlord to see, if that's something that he wants to do, and if he needs to investigate it. So all of this, you ask all these questions. So when you have the tenant and you're about to sign the lease, it's not when the landlord just now wants to go investigate. Oh, is it a good idea for me to get paid on Zelle? Is it a good idea for me to Venmo or direct deposit? Are there any fees from my bank when I receive those payments? So it gives time for the landlord to investigate. So we have had situation that the landlord will receive direct deposit for whatever reason, and there will be like a $30 fee. So all of this is up to the landlord to investigate and be ready. So we already spoke about the CCNR. Number 7. Sometimes, people ask random question. Hey, landlord, is the landlord okay with the 2-year lease? You know what? And a lot of times people do that because they don't want after the first year to rent go up. So the next question is, hey, landlord, are you okay with the 2-year lease? And are you willing to keep the lease for the full 2 years? So it's a decision that the landlord makes, and a lot of times happens. I personally, I'm not for it, because you know what, you never know if they're gonna be able to put up with each other. They might move in and see that the landlord is not maintaining the proper property, and then vice versa. The tenant move in and they're troublesome, and the landlord cannot wait to kick him out. So there's no reason to go through this for 2 years. So if they ask me, I usually say, I would ask, but I would not make the recommendation. Of course, it's good for me because after a year they leave, I can bring somebody else and get paid again.
Is there typically?
But that's not the reason. Go ahead.
Is there typically a lease agreement for to stay in a guest house?
There has to be a contract no matter what. Even if it's a guest house. Are you talking about, I'm assuming you're talking about the ADU.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I'm changing that because the guest house might not have the certificate of occupancy to make it legal to rent out. So to keep everything kosher, I'm assuming you're talking about the ADU, which was built legally. If that's the case, yeah, you need a contract no matter what.
So if the.
You don't want to deal, you know what? No matter what you do in your life, always do a contract because, and this is one of those things that I see people do business. They don't have a exit strategy or they don't have a contract and that's where all the loose lawsuits come about. So always a contract.
So if the ADU is not built legally, you shouldn't, rent it out.
Well, that's a different story. We leave it for another class, but I highly recommend make sure that the owner has certificates of occupancy, meaning that legally they can rent it out. Let's leave it at that. Number 9, are there any restriction that they need to know? You know what, again, there might be, if it's a condo, maybe the HOA does not allow barbecue in the balcony. Maybe you wanna let the tenant know and he moves in and you're doing barbecue and say, hey, I'm an avid barbecuer and every Sunday I have to have barbecue. And believe me, that has happened to me. The guy said, well, forget about this unit. I have to do barbecue every Sunday. If I cannot do barbecue on the balcony, this is not the unit for me. So these are some of the stuff that you should know. And sometimes when you get the bylaws and you read the bylaws, you find out, yeah, they cannot have a barbecue in the balcony. So these are some. The other thing need to be disclosed, if somebody passed away, that would be, number 10. Has there been any issues that I need to, so if somebody passed away, you need to disclose that to the tenant. If somebody, so these are, it's not only for sale, even for when you're leasing a property, you need to disclose that. And is your property rent control? You know what, it could be a house, but it could be rent control.
Is it for the year that it was built? Or is it the area?
No, there's another thing that you may not know. If you own more than 5 properties, your 5 single family it becomes rent control.
All of your properties become rent control?
Yeah.
More than
Well, you know
five?
what, you need to brush up on the local laws. So what I'm telling you, I'm just throwing something at you. I just want to make sure you do your own investigation and make sure that you know if that property is rent control or not.
You
And
find
according,
that on
no, because what I'm telling you right now, it would be, lieu of question. Probably the landlord should know.
If it's a condo.
If it's a condo, if the landlord owns more than 2 units in that building, it's rent control. If somebody owns more than 2 units in the same building, it's rent control.
Even if it's a different LLC,
Well, that's
But
it.
but if they don't, they just usually own landlords only own, as a condo, they own 1 unit. So how do you find out? Because I thought if any building within our area, if it was built before 1974, it's automatically rent control.
This is for different purpose. For the purpose of, that law was also for multi-units. So if you build 10 units, it goes back 15 years. And anything that was built 15 years becomes rent control. That's for multi-unit. Now, single family has a little bit modified rules, right?
Condo is a.
Condo is 1 unit.
So does it fall under?
Because the owner only owns 1, he doesn't own, so, but let's say somebody says, hey, I love this building, I'm gonna buy 2 condos in that building. So that makes it, it becomes rent control because he has more than 1 unit in that building.
And if they have 1 unit and the building is more than. 15
That's
units,
not, that does not.
so.
But again, these are city by city, you need to do your own investigation. I'm just throwing things at you, so for you to think about it.
And this ties into what's going on here. I was watching the news on my phone and there's this lady concerned or tripping about the fact that the landlord is asking her to leave because, she wants to make, or he wants to make renovations to the property. So of course, we all know what's gonna happen.
Sorry, let me cut you off. Anything that's not related, all those different rules and regulations, the long class, if it's pertain to the contract, I would answer. Otherwise, you're very behind. I have 1 hour to go over shitload of documents, and any question that is not exactly the contract, I have to cut you off. After class, I would discuss it, but not right now. Number 12, section 8. If there is a section 8, you need to, it's good for you to know, so when you're promoting it, you know that the property has been approved for section 8. That's another thing good to know. Do you have any, you know what, sometimes you strictly ask the landlord, hey, if somebody, or is there, you know, if they have less than 700 FICO score, are you willing to even consider? You know, so some landlords can be really, really strict, and it's good to know from the get-go, so you know what type of people you should look for. And right then, you know, when you're conversing with those applicants, you know where you stand or where the landlord stands. You know, again, you can ask them, well, what's the maximum number of people that you want to live in your one bedroom? The landlord might say, hey, I don't want more than 2 people staying. So these are good to know for your, you know. Again, are you okay with any co-signer or a guarantor? Some people might say, no, I don't care for them, I don't want to. So these are just general questions to ask. These are things that, and lastly, parking. There may or may not be parking, and where the parking is, the number of the parking, where is it? So when you are showing the units, if it's a condo, you know exactly, and if it's a tandem, it's a side-by-side, so you know specific exactly where the parking is, and when you are showing it, you can go and exactly show that unit.
Oh, sorry, guarantors are co-signers, right?
Yeah.
Just one. Can I just, before you go?
Yeah.
The last couple of questions are important for you, especially if you are doing a lease between like 2,000 and 4,000, you will get shitload of people asking for it. You really don't wanna, at one point it comes, you don't wanna spend so much time. So these questions, you are just, they said that, oh, can I come and see the unit? You say yes, they come, and then suddenly they said that, oh, we're gonna move in 5 months, or we are 8 people. We are getting this. I mean, my brother, my sisters, her son, her daughter, blah, blah, blah. So the more you know about the red lines of the owner, you can just eliminate
Your time, you know,
People that-
the
yeah.
time that you spend going out, because at the end of the day, leases we do as a service, but they are not the greatest moneymaker. So imagine if you keep on running to the property and coming back for no reason, at the end you feel like, oh man, I did all that only for 900 bucks, what the hell? So you know what, that's why when you have an understanding of what is it that the landlord wants, you know, it eliminates a lot, it saves you a lot of time. Moving on, I'm just giving you a copy of what the application looks like, the type of questions that there are. Make sure you read it, you understand it, and when you go, if you look at number 2F, names of all people proposed occupying and relationship to the applicant. So that's exactly what I told you, because what I'm gonna do when I'm doing the lease contract, I'm gonna look at the application and copy paste practically what's on the application onto the lease contract. And a lot of people, they say, okay, it's my one, and they think, oh, you know what, Chiju, oh, I didn't know that I have to, my 2-year-old son has to be on there. I didn't know that I have to put my kids. I thought it was only the 18 and over, only the adults. That it's irrelevant to the age, everyone has to be there. So the name, if there is a pet, it has to be there. It's asking if is there, you know, how many pets, what time, number, you know, the next G tells you pet. So a lot of the things that we went over, these are the same questions that is there. It's just that sometimes applicants, they don't complete these applications correctly. Look it over. If you see that they did not do it the right way, if they say, oh, I'm moving in with my wife and my kids, and then you don't see the kid's name, go back, ask them to complete that. Again, as you see here, you're gonna see a loop, and I highly recommend that you read this, get a feel for it, see what type of questions you have here. But I left it here, so there is number 3, residence history, you know. So they have to tell you where they lived. You can see how often, you know what, sometimes it tells you previous address and current address, and when you get an idea how often these people move. If you see that every year they're moving, it gives you a pattern of what type of people they are. They just pack and leave. And some landlords say, listen, Joe, bring me somebody that I don't have to replace them in 1 year, or they're not gonna go, take off in a year. I want a family that's gonna stay here for 5 years, because I'm tired of somebody moving in, I have to rehab the place, paint the place, and do all the work. So some patterns you can see from how often these people move, or they give you the employment information that you can call, see who they are, what they are. Again, as you see, it names the bank information. You get it before getting all those documents, even before asking the tenant, just by the application, you're gonna see, they're gonna tell you how much money they have. And then when they send you the actual bank statement, it's a reconfirmation. So just by application, you're gonna get a lot of information from them.
So, I'm sorry, on the top of this, they have to do the rent split too, that's different.
You know what, usually I have them do the application, ask them question. If I see that they're good candidates, then I ask them to do the rent split. One of the reasons, because sometimes I feel bad to have somebody pay $40 and then rejecting him. So to be fair, sometimes I ask them questions. So I check to see if they are even a candidate. If I see that they want to move in 3 months, I'm not gonna let them do the credit report. If I see that they don't have enough income, or they have issues, or they're working cash, or whatever I see, I tell them, listen, why don't you give me a free credit report, one of those from Karma, something that doesn't ding your credit, just so I know what your FICO is. If I see that they give me something from Credit Karma or some other place, or from Wells Fargo or whatever, and the FICO is 700, and they're decent income, and everything else matches up, and I discuss it with the landlord, then I run their credit. I try to be fair and nice as much as I can, so not for them randomly run their credit.
John, on that same point there, is it okay to add, for instance, if people are dealing with her and debit for separate credit reports, free credit reports, so I can know exactly where.
Yeah, of course. If they usually say, hey, who has a better credit? What do you think your FICO score is? What's your FICO for your partner? So you try to, what my job sometimes is, how can I get their application approved?
Right.
So when I ask them question, I try to go from different angle. How can I make it look good in front of the landlord? So that's why I go to attack it from different positions. All right, so this would be, so go over the application and gives you very much a good idea of what's going on. Go to next.
This one is to run their credit report.
These are, yeah, okay, right now, if you decide to run their credit yourself and there's a fee, that's where you have them sign they consenting to you running their credit. But usually, what the nice thing about rent-free would it do, that rent-free, when they're doing this form, it let them pay, complete, and then it comes to you. Then you sign, and then it lets you see the credit report. So
they just
rent-free does it all for you.
They just go to rent-free, fill out their information, pay for it, and you get $68.
And then it comes to me, I have to sign. Once I sign, then I can see the whole thing. Okay, next. Let's go to that. I'm gonna stop for a quick thing. Do we have any questions from people online? Anybody online that has a question, I would like, I wanna make sure that if you guys have questions, please let me know. Or unmute yourself and ask your question.
Or they can write again.
Okay, all right. Let's
What
scroll
is this
down.
form?
This is a notice regarding background check and all that. Again, this is another form that's attached that it's gonna go to them through rent-free and they're gonna sign. So all the time, yeah. So now I'm gonna quickly go over the residential lease contract. So date, the name of the tenants, whoever, if it's roommates, board, the people that I ran their credit and they're the guarantors, assuming it's a, whatever, if it's both spouse or partners or roommates, they're gonna go up there. And one thing that you wanna make sure that they understand, when it comes to roommates, so one roommate takes off and one roommate stays, and he wants to break the lease and goes, hey, I'm only liable for half of it because I had a roommate. That's not how the law works. You wanna make sure that they understand the law is whoever is named on the lease is liable for the full amount. So it's not like there's two people on the lease and it's 50-50. Each one is liable for only half of the rent. Each one of them is responsible for the full amount of rent. So if one loses their job, the other one cannot say, oh, that's not my fault. Why are you digging my credit? Because I only want 50% and I'm only responsible to pay my half. That's not how the lease contract works. Each party is responsible for the full amount, not half or percentage, but 100%.
You're talking about this page or this page?
General,
Oh, general? No.
general.
So you don't name the kids up,
Huh?
you don't name the kids up.
No, that's not where the kids go. Okay, so next, you know what, and the nice thing is, as you know, you can always do an MLS Connect. So, for example, here, I did an MLS Connect, and the nice thing is, if you get familiar with zip form, you can do MLS Connect, and Lexington is one of our own, admit. ML, you can link, so you can populate all the information from MLS onto your form. So that's what I did. That's why automatically the address came about. So that's the address. Number B, the permits are for the sole use of the personal residence by the following named persons. So that's where the name of the kids go and who they are, what they are, or the roommates or whatever, or the grandparents that they're gonna live there. So you name all those people there. All right, any person in the premises, other than those listed in the paragraph, because the guests are not permitted to stay more than 14 days. Joseph, you remember your question? 14 days, anybody that intends to stay more than 14 days, they are not a guest anymore, and their name has to be on the contract.
At one time.
At one time, but even,
However, if it's one day a month,
but nevertheless, if that somebody is 14 days every month, that's not it. Guest doesn't visit once a month.
So you're talking about which one are,
We are talking about first page of the lease contract, number
B.
B.
So if they stay in the 14 days,
If you have a guest, let's say you have a cousin that visits you and they stay 13 days with you, it's okay. But if you have somebody that stays 13 days every month, that's not the game. Doesn't consider a guest.
Single parent, when their kids come over,
They name that son on the lease contract. Doesn't matter if they're gonna be there 2 days a month or whatever. Put their name on the lease contract and save yourself headache. Next.
Joe, sorry, can I say something?
Yeah,
Back to what she was saying with like a 2-year-old. Your question was, you have to put the name of the 2-year-old on there, right?
yes,
on section number B.
yeah,
On
Yeah.
section number,
B,
on this page, right?
yeah. B, on the lease contract.
On the lease, so if the one parent doesn't pay the baby, it's not gonna pay. Is that,
No, I think again, listen, you have to be with me, you have to pay attention, okay? All right, you see on the top of the page, with the date, after that, it says tenant. Those people are gonna be responsible. You're not gonna put the name of the baby up there. You're gonna put only the name of the person, the people that are gonna be responsible to pay.
oh.
Understand? Okay, good, let's move on. Number C. Go up a little bit, okay. The following, number C, we have two places that you can put the personal properties. This number C is the ones that the landlord gonna maintain. So if they're gonna maintain the stove and the microwave and the dishwasher, that's where it's gonna go, under C. The following personal property maintained. And for those of you that you're on the computer, if you wanna make a sample, or if you have those printed, you can write on yours. Give yourself some idea of what is the personal property, you can write on those. Now, then when we go to section 11G, that's where you put the personal properties that the landlord does not maintain. All right, so let's move forward. D, premise may be subject to a local rent control ordinance. So if you know it is, you can indicate it. Number 2, the term begins, begin on, so that's the beginning of when the tenant gonna have possession of the property. They might get the key sooner, but that's where legally they're gonna be, occupying the property. They might, some landlord may give them a key to move their stuff in, not to leave, but to move their stuff in over the weekend, but the actual date. So we have different landlords do things, but for me, I don't care if they're moving their stuff in or not, they're gonna have key, they're gonna have premises, they're gonna have, that's where the contract should stay. So number 2, the term begins as of the date that they're gonna start paying. Now, 2A and B, we are usually dealing with B, which is the lease. Make sure the lease agreement terminates. That's a lot of times you forget to change the 23 to 24, make sure it's 1 year. And then the full year gonna be, let's say, if you are starting from December 1st and it's 1 year, one will be the last day. It's gonna be November 31st. Make sure, 24, right? So you're gonna do that. Sometimes, let's say somebody moves in mid-month. To make it easy, sometimes down, when we go further down, I prorate that half a month or few days. Okay, we're gonna get there. Now, going to number 3. Now, quickly can go up, I just wanna mention one, can you go up? Now, number B, it gives you a date and a time. I usually put like 5 or 6 o'clock and not at midnight. Because I wanna be able to come at 6, check it out, make sure that they're moved out. And they understand that by 5 or 6 o'clock, they have to be out. Because some people might take their sweet time and they say, well, but you know what, then I don't know if they moved in or moved out by midnight or the next morning. I wanna be able to come at 6 PM and see them out of there and get the key done. So when you put a date and a time, the tenant knows that if they need to move, they have to start moving the day before and not the same day, and account that they need to be totally out of the place by 6 PM. Make sense? When you give people exact precise time and date, they know that they have to act accordingly. If you leave it blank, they wanna be there till midnight, and that's not what you want.
So that's only if they wanna move out.
That's the termination.
And the lease date.
Which number is it? I don't.
Number B, 2B.
So I had tenants that we're gonna move out. I sent them a message, we'll move out date is tomorrow, please be out.
According to the lease contract,
According to my lease.
item number 2B,
Right.
you need to be, I will see you no later than 6 PM to collect the keys and take possession.
Right, when I went to get the keys there, moved out, I said, if you stay in the next room, I'll charge you.
Yeah, so when you have that, so if you go there, yeah, exactly. So next, we have number 3, rent. As far as 3A, tenant agrees to pay whatever, rent is, 3,000-4,000, whatever it is per month. Rent is payable in advance on the 1st of the month. If, for whatever reason, you say, since we started the lease on the 7th, now they're supposed to pay on the 7th or the 14th. Then you change the date there to that time. But I don't like when, I always like the rent to be due on the first, that's why I prorate, and I make it that it has to be always payable on the first of the month. Sounds good? Number B, rent is payable in advance. Number C, if commenced falls on any day the under the day rent, so you go through all that. D, payment, rent shall be paid. You know what, that goes back to what originally asked, I told you to ask the landlord. Is the landlord okay with any other form of payment besides regular check? Do they want cashier check? Do they want to be wired? Do they want it to be Zelle or any other? And then to who that's to be? Sometimes they have a corporation and sometimes they want it to themselves. Maybe they want you to pay the management company. So these are the things that you need to sort out to whom it's gonna pay. Don't assume that automatically it's gonna be the landlord himself. It could be his corporation, it could be his management company. So these are some of the stuff that you have to ask. Sometimes if it's the management company and you know you're supposed to deliver the check at the beginning of each month to their office, who is the person, who's the manager, who's the person that they're gonna meet? What's their address? What's their office hours to go and deliver the check? So that's where you have all this, the phone number, the address, if you're delivering the check to the owner's residence, what's the address? So all of this information, a tenant can go back, look at their lease, and they're gonna find all this information right here. All right, going down to security deposit, number 4. So whatever is the agreed security deposit, and always make him understand. So there's one thing that I want you to it's in bold because there was a lot of lawsuits and issues. That's why it was done in bold. If you look under number 4B, in bold, it says security deposit shall not be used by tenant in lieu of payment for the last month rent. On this subject, just also let me tell you another thing. When you are collecting deposit and rent in California, you cannot ask for last month rent. It is not legal. You cannot say, oh, pay me a security deposit and also pay me for the last month rent. That's illegal. So you cannot ask for last month rent. This is not a commercial.
So it says you cannot collect last month's check in advance, right?
Well, no, don't get confused. Here, what it says that, let's say you get a 2-month security deposit and you're about to move out next month and say, you know what, landlord, you know what, I'm not gonna pay my 12-month rent, just deduct it from my security deposit. So there's a clear understanding, the money that the tenant leaves as a security deposit, it is not meant to be used as the last month rent because there were a lot of complications. That's why they made it in bulk. So, and you know what? You're gonna have a lot of your clients that they call you and say, hey, my lease is almost over. Can you do that? And you're gonna say, hey, why don't you go to your lease contract and see number 4? And it's strictly telling you that you cannot use that as your rent. Moving on.
Hasn't the law changed just recently to 1 month?
No, it's not. Okay. So, number 5. You remember when I told you that that you can prorate? So right here. Right here, you can say, you know what, from November 15 to November 31st, right here, you can, in here, just indicate the date that you're gonna prorate and say, okay, since you moved in November 15, I'm gonna prorate, and the way you prorate, you take the rent and you divide it by 30. Irrelevant if it's April 20, there's 28 days, or if it's a November, it has 31 days. No matter what, you always divide it by 30 or you multiply it by 12 and you divide it by 365 days. But always you divide it by 30. Doesn't matter how many days are in that month, you divide always the rent by 30, and then you multiply it by days that left. So if you divide it, if it's, let's say, it's a 3,000 rent, you divide it by 30, it's 100, and the proration is for 14 days, so you collect $1,400 from November 16 till November 31st, and that's where it goes. In total due, it's gonna be, the total due is gonna go right there. It's gonna go right here. Okay, the next line, you're gonna have the security deposit. Okay, and then, you know what, also I put in moving fee. So if it's a condo and there is a moving fee, you add that in, say, hey, there's a $300 moving fee. Or 150 if it's a condo.
Sorry, what do you put under payment receipt?
You are not there yet. Follow me and then you're gonna get there.
So the security amount.
So you have the proration on the top line, then you have the security deposit. And then sometimes under the first other, add the first month. So you know what? If I prorated November and I want a payment for December, then under the first other, probably I'm gonna put. Pay attention to this. You see where in the first other, you're gonna do December 1st through December 30th, $3,000 rent. And then the moving is $30, and the security deposit, if it's a 2 months, is 6,000, and the proration was 14. And the zip form was added all for you. So payment received is usually blank, but the due dates, sometimes you may not want to collect the December 1st, the first month right away. You might say, you know what, give that to, it's due on whatever date, a later date, 10 days ahead, or maybe on December 1st. So you put the date, the due dates here, if it's different than the contract date. Or you know what, in 3 days or whatever. So if you're doing the contract, let's say, you know, the lease is gonna be in effect in 5 days. So I would make this, all of these due dates in 3 days to make sure that I get the check and the landlord had enough time to deposit the check. Or not only that, it's not a check, it's a cashier check. So if you look above it, it gives you a choice. So the choice is gonna be either wire or a cashier check. I do not recommend money order or personal check.
Why?
Why? Because I want to make sure that they don't write you a check and they move into the unit and the check doesn't go through. Then the tenant is in possession and you don't have any money. Now from the get-go, you're gonna start fighting with the tenant to get him paid, and he's already in the property. Do you really want to work with somebody, a tenant that already the check bounced and he's already in the house and you're trying to kick him out? I don't think that's what you want to do. So you want to make sure the form of payment is guaranteed. So the wire or the cashier check is the best course that you would be having guaranteed pay. Make sense? All right, so we usually go back. Usually, the pay to, again, in some instances, when you have the moving 300, sometimes we have the tenant make the check payable to the HOA. For the moving and the pay to, it should be, maybe you wanna have the tenant pay directly to the HOA, not the landlord. Then, instead of putting the landlord's name here, you might put the HOA name. Make sense? Well, no, if it's a condo, and if it's a moving fee, it would be the HOA. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So, and for the other balance due and payment received, you know what? Some of these things, it's not gonna be completed till you actually receive the payment. So where it says, the third column says payment received, you know what? It's gonna be blank till actually you receive the money. So basically what I do the contract, when I meet the client to receive the cashier check, once they do, and then I write it in, and I have the landlord to initial. Make sense? All right, number 6. It would, late fees and what have you, and make sure the late fees, they don't exceed what the legal amount is. 10%. So make sure that what you're putting in there, it goes with the city and the locality of where you're doing the rent, and if there are any restrictions. Number 7, parking. Some units may or may not have parking, so you better know. And if there is a parking, let them know where is the parking, what the parking number, which parking, so there is no, they know exactly where they have to park. Because if they don't park in the right place, there's a possibility that their car will be towed by the HOA if it's a condo. And once you tell them, hey, you are supposed to park on unit, space number 5, and they don't, and somebody tells them, now they know why, because they didn't park in the right spot. Even if the listing agent or the landlord does not give you a spot number, make sure you put one in, because you want to make sure that you are secured and you guaranteed which spot is yours. Storage. Going back to parking, sometimes there are additional fee for the parking. A lot of people started using a fee for parking in a mean of being able to kick somebody out. So basically tell them, hey, if you don't pay rent, it means that you didn't pay for your parking. So if you didn't pay for parking, I can take away your parking spot. So you might not be able to kick them out of the unit, but certainly you can take away their parking. So some landlords use that to be able to kind of hustle the tenant that is not paying rent. Say, hey, when you're not paying your rent and we charge $25 for it, so if you don't pay the rent, it means that you didn't pay for the parking, you're not allowed to park. It's different than not paying rent and you cannot kick him out of the house.
Here, the right to parking is or is not included in the rent charge.
And then below it, they say there is an additional fee of that much. Assuming that they pay, they can park.
So there is 0 additional charge if it's included in the rent.
Well, now, because of all the laws that you cannot evict tenants, and because we had the COVID moratorium and all that, a lot of people started charging for the parking. So in case that tenants start say, hey, it's COVID, I'm not paying you rent. So okay, but at the same time, you cannot park, because when you're not paying rent, you're not paying for the parking.
Also, in some rent control areas, you cannot raise the rent. Rent control doesn't control the parking. So if you put a charge for parking $100, you cannot raise the rent maybe $300, but you can raise the parking $500.
Wow.
But I didn't say that.
All right, moving on. Also, some building, they have storage. So you know what? The landlord may choose to store their own stuff and not give you the storage space that is, each unit have. So here it says, if you do or don't. So when you have somebody doing the contract for you, review it, make sure that the listing agent or the seller has done this correctly. Moving on. It's gonna be utilities. Tenant agreed to pay for all utilities and services and the following charge. So if there is any other charge that, for example, what would be it additional? The cable, well, it would be a utility or internet that Again, you can put it there just because some things, internet may not be considered for some people utility. So you might be able, and if there's an extra charge for that. But beside that, then you have the second line that says except. So all utilities except in the condo, probably that would be water and trash. Because water and trash is kind of a part of your HOA. When you pay your HOA fees, most buildings, not 100%, are covering water and trash. Again, these are questions that from the get-go, we have asked you to ask the landlord. Next,
There's a question.
yeah.
No,
Okay, the question for, who's the person, D? The person that asked the question, if the tenant or the landlord calls you after a year and tells you that they need some help between them because there is some complication. The moment that the tenant take possession, you are hands off. You don't butt in, you don't get yourself into trouble. So once your job is done, when they do all the paperwork, the tenant takes possession and everything, okay? That's the last time you're gonna interject, because the moment you get involved, you also kind of risking your license, because you have no business to be there. You're not property manager. And somehow you can get dragged into things that it might be liability for you as a lawsuit. That your job, you're not a property manager. That's why you're gonna have other forms that be signed, or the Keller Williams disclosures that says, hey, we are not property manager. Any issues, it's between the landlord and tenant. So when it comes to that, nevertheless, if the landlord wants them to be out, they have to give them a 30-day notice, and they have to follow with the local laws. And you can refer them to the housing department or an attorney, but try not to get involved. Next.
even there's a photo.
Now, with the 9A water submeter and all that, now we have a lot of instances where with all the ADUs, there are no separate water meter. So a lot of landlords putting submeters, so make sure there's a form for that, and make sure that whatever that is, it's done in the right way. That, if there is gonna be a submeter, a form is used, and exactly, how the ADU gonna be charged, or how each tenant gonna be billed for. Moving on. And number 10 is a condition, and we have a form MII. I included a copy of it for you guys that you can look at. I highly recommend that every time a tenant is moving in, same day that you meet with them to collect the check and give them the keys, do a walkthrough and check mark all the stuff. I have a copy of that form. If you go on Zip form, look for MII. This way, when they are ready to move out, and there was a scratch on a wall, and you noted on that form, and you know what, when they're moving out, you take that form again, and you look at it, and oh, you know what, when we moved in, there was already a scratch on the wall. Oh, the window was not fully opening. Oh, there was a crack on the window. So when you note all of that, and also at the bottom of that form, MII, it also, you can indicate how many keys, how many remotes, how many of each item was there. You give them that day and reconfirm. So when you're going to, if you're gonna be involved in the move out, you take that piece of paper, you see what was the condition at the first day, how many keys, how many remotes, and that's what you want to back from the tenant. Hey, we gave you 2 remotes. Where are they? We gave you a key for the mailbox, we gave you this and that. So this is, if you look at that form at the bottom, there is a room for the keys and all that. Make sense?
Or am I actually, that's a question for myself too. Because I know we were always doing, we are printing this MMI, going there, giving to the tenant, because tenant needs to fill it herself or himself to the tenant. I've been in the situation when I was representing the tenant, they even, the listing agent even send the MMI with a DocuSign, already just put out everything himself and just wanted to be signed.
Okay, now look at this. It says, it gives you different options, right? A, take and acknowledge the condition of the thing. B, housing provider will provide a tenant statement, MII. So this is where the housing number B. What does it say?
Okay, but so it says that you're automatically accepting anything that's the housing provider tells you on the MMI.
No, it says that the housing. Within 3 days after execution of the agreement or prior to commence, or 3 days, tenant shall complete and return the MMI.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So the landlord will provide it, but the tenant.
No,
has to
they're
complete it.
providing it filled up.
And
Filled
most
up,
of
you
the-
know what, that thing, you can strictly tell the agent that that's not gonna be signed. They cannot mandate that.
Yeah, most of the time, a tenant doesn't return it.
Well, no,
Because
sometimes
they
if they
have the
docu-signing it, if you're not signing it, you know, and you call the agent and say, hey, can you remove this form before we sign the lease contract? Because my client wants to do an actually walkthrough and this form has not been completed. So you can legally say, object. Okay, so going next, number 11. You remember I told you, under number 11, G, the following items of personal property included in the premises without warrant and the house provided, which, you know, by now, you know, the house provided is the landlord, will not maintain, repair or replace them. So that's where a lot of agents, they don't even pay attention to that, or they do the first page and they jump to the last page and they don't know even this exists. So this is a place that what basically means when I told you that, hey, I'm gonna put the washer and dryer, but I'm not gonna guarantee it. You know what? That's where the washer and dryer goes.
Where
Right.
you're putting in the word guaranteeing up to after, or up to $300 or after.
Well, that's a different thing. That's a different, well, you know, we have a lot of different structures, but right now we just straightforward. On item number 2, I would put things that the landlord willing to maintain, and items that he's living there, but he's not maintaining it, I would put it under 11G. Okay, I just want to quickly bring that up to you. Now going up, let me go back to B. Housing provided or tenant shall maintain gardening or, so if you see, I already pre-check marked this. Let's say you're renting a house, right?
This is 11D, right?
I'm talking about 11C and D.
No, B and C.
And I'm sorry, 11B and C. Okay, the reason I pre-check mark that for you, because let's say that you're renting out a house, right? And the landlord say, hey, I would pay for the gardener, I would send the gardener to come and garden. But the gardener cannot come every day and water everything, right? Or the tenant say, hey, you know what, I'm paying for water, it's a house, it's not a condo, it's a house, I'm paying for water. You know what? Maybe I don't water, or I do it once a week, or I don't water at all. And if it goes bad, the landlord is responsible. If the landlord can say that, hey, my gardener was there every week, doing whatever that the gardener was supposed to do is responsible, he done it, but the grass got green, or something else happened because the tenant failed to water the gardener, and now I have to put a new sod to replace the whole grass. Guess what? The tenant, when you told that number B, tenant shall water the garden, and landscape and all that. It's putting the responsibility onto the tenant, make sure that they give water, that the water is on the watering the grass, you know. The last thing you want to do, put that responsibility on the shoulder of the gardener, and then, you know what? If the gardener comes and waters it once a week, I hope you have vegetation there that it only requires once a week. And don't account for automation. Don't say, oh, my grass is on auto, it automatically would water. Because the tenant can always turn it off, mess with it, or do something like that. So personally, on my own properties, that's the way I do it. I make sure that the tenant is responsible for the water part of it. And and I do pay a gardener to go in and do the garden. Make sense?
So what's the difference between B and C?
B is watering, and C is somebody to go there and fix the broken sprinklers, to mow the lawn, to trim the trees and stuff like that. And B is to water the garden and the shrubs.
And
Okay.
you said C is fixing what?
Maintain, the word
So
maintain.
one of them is maintaining, one of them is watering. The maintenance would be just mowing the lawn, trimming the trees, and doing stuff like that. Now, then you have number D.
What was C, sorry,
Maintain.
maybe is.
Okay, number D. D can be a housing, or the tenant shall maintain, examples could be pool. You know, who's gonna pay for the maintenance of the pool? You know what, a tenant say, hey, I've been living in a house, I had a pool for years, I've been maintaining my own pool. I know how to put the, Clorox in there, I know how to do everything, I will take care of it. On the other hand, the landlord say, you know what, I know you know how to do it, but I don't trust you, I'm gonna bring my own pool man to take care of it. So one of the other items, number D, potentially can be who's gonna maintain pool. Make sense so far?
If the landlord pays for it, it's part of the rent. There's no extra fee for it.
No.
If the landlord is paying for it, yeah, that's what it's gonna be. Okay, moving
Just
on.
one, can I just say, also, don't worry, I mean, you can always advise to the landlord. Landlord said that, oh, you know what, why should I pay? They just take care of anything. Don't forget, as soon as you rent a house, it's just somebody else's house. If you're sending your own gardener, your own pool guy and etc., that means that at least once a month or once or 2 weeks, you are having eyes in your property if something is going on. So that's also a good thing.
From personal experience, I thought I would be saving money having my tenant do the gardening. The worst thing, I end up spending thousands of dollars fixing because he didn't maintain it, and I had a yellow grass, I had to spend thousands of dollars fixing the garden. That's why I never again would let my tenant to do gardening or to do maintenance. So don't never do that. Number 13, that is with the pet. So as soon as you click the box here, as soon as you click, so it says, unless otherwise provided in accordance with the law, no animal or pet shall be kept on the above property, data except. You click on that and the zip form would automatically populate a form. Can you go down? Go all the way down.
It's the animal form.
That's animal form, all the way.
Yeah.
No, no. No. Right there.
You have a pool and hot tub.
Okay, go up one more. Okay, so you see here, this is the form that if they have a pet, you have to make sure that this item is completed. And that's the ATCA. It used to be called PET form, but they changed it because they changed some certain things in it. And then when you scroll down, so first it tells how many you have, what breed it is, and then when you go down to number 13, go down. Well, actually, number let me see. Go up a little bit. Go up. Renters insurance.
Renters insurance, see.
It's 12.
Okay.
12, okay, so if you look at 12C, here it says, if you check mark, tenant agrees to carry renter's insurance, which include coverage for the pet ownership. You remember I told you that? So the purpose of for this, it spells out a lot of stuff, including that the tenant should carry a renter's insurance that covers for the ownership of that type of a pet. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's go, and then let's go to the next page. Okay, also you have a pool and flood disclosure. If the property has a pool, make sure that the tenant, you give that, provide that to the tenant to sign. Just for, God forbid, if the kid gets drowned and whatever, knowing that there are some rules, even if you don't have any bylaws or CCNR, or just a single family home, they know that there's no lifeguard, that the tenant has to take this, the necessary precautions to make sure that they themselves or the kids, they don't get it. So there are certain forms like the pool or pool disclosure or the mold disclosure that will be very important for the landlord. It protects the landlord. You know, mold, lead, a lot of these things are solely protecting the landlord more than anything. So if you want to protect your landlord, don't try to avoid less disclosures. More disclosures, it protects the landlord. Mold is very important. Pool is very important. You know, these are things that you have to make sure that you include.
This is
Okay.
number 13, right?
Talking
about the same 13 animals.
13, and then there's a pool. After that, there's another form
This
for
is
pool.
What does it have to do with the animal?
It doesn't, it's another subject.
Next page.
Oh,
Okay, go
So
back.
unless the animals fall into the pool.
Okay, go back to the. Okay. So now, all right.
Is it, right?
Now you just scroll down.
Oh, I'm on the right place.
14.
Okay, now, number 14, you know,
You're here.
if you are, smoking, but the doctor told you that you can smoke weed, you know, there are certain, times that there is exception, but most oftenly, I do not like any of my tenants to smoke. If they need to smoke, they can go smoke in the yard, not in the property. Unfortunately, smoking, we had instances that we had to spend thousands of dollars taking the smell out of the carpet and AC unit. So I highly recommend no smoking whatsoever in the unit. If anybody needs to smoke, it has to be in the yard or in the open area, not in the, because the amount of money that you have to spend to take the smell out of the carpet or the AC, you're looking at thousands of dollars, and it's not fun to do. Next, now number 15, and 16, it talks about if the property is part of a condominium. Glenn, you remember when you asked, they're strictly telling you, are there any rules and regulation? And when are you gonna provide them with the rules and regulation? Number 15 and 16. So it's part of the contract. So there's no skipping it. They cannot, the landlord cannot say, well,
This is where you have the first element in the phone number 15, one time you told me.
no, well, not only that, I would have them initial the actual bylaws and the,
Oh,
and then on the bylaw, if there's a place that says we charge deposits when you're moving out or moving in. And then I have them initial that, so they know there is a deposit too. Not only there's a fee, there's a deposit. So that's regarding the competition. So you know what? This is to the fact that this is a condominium and there's a HOA, there's a bylaw, and there are other governing things that, let's move forward. If you go up. Okay. If you look at number 16C, it tells you housing provider shall provide tenant with a copy of the HOA rules. So here it's strictly telling you, when you landlord, when are you providing the HOA bylaws, rules and regulations?
So you give them the bylaws, rules, regulations, and the CNR?
Well, this is in our and the bylaws.
Well, some of the stuff is in the rules and regulations, that's not.
Well, some, not everyone has a rule and regulation, some have rule and regulation, they don't have a bylaw. So it depends, but whatever they provide, you provide them. Okay, all right. So far, these are the items. Next, number 18. So, as far as it goes, how many keys of each, you know,
17, sorry.
17, alteration and repairs, unless otherwise, so basically it means that if the tenant is gonna do any changes, they have to notify the landlord in writing. So, you know what, I just recently had a landlord come and say, hey, listen, Joe, they just randomly painted the wall. I said, did they give you any notification? Did they tell you anything in writing? And she said, no. I said, well, when and if they're moving out, you can charge them. Because let's say you have a white wall and the tenant goes and paint them green. That's costly to change it back to white. So that's why it's important for the tenant to let you know any changes that they want to make. It could be it would be something like paint, or sometimes you'd be surprised at the other changes that the tenant would do and won't tell the landlord.
So even doing your nails or all?
No,
No.
okay, moving on. So number 18, now you're gonna say, hey, how many keys, it's gonna be for the main unit, how many keys for the mailbox, how many keys are for the common area, how many remotes, how many fobs, you know, and if there to be any codes, you know, code with, you know, like for example, if there is a code for the garage keypad, or there's a code for any other thing, maybe you have a smart item that needs a code and access. So all of this has to be indicated here. Make sense? Let's scroll down, 19, number 19C, and I'm really going through the items that you have to check mark. Tenant authorizes the use of lockbox to allow entry in the premise and agree sign. So let's say that the tenant gives you a 30-day notice and you're putting the property for lease. And you want to put a supra key so agents can access the property. I will never do that, and I don't recommend ever to put a supra or a key box on a property that people live in. You can put a lockbox for your own use and never share the combo or anything else. But even for that, I tend not to put ever, even if it's for sale or for lease, I never put a lockbox because I don't want to have anybody accessing it. And I know how negligent our agents, even if on the MLS, hey, you need to let me know when you want to go in so I can let the tenant know. A lot of agents that assume just because there's a super lockbox, it's vacant and they can get the key and get in. And believe it or not, I have seen that stupidity too many times. That's why I usually don't do it. I don't think it's a safe practice and I don't recommend.
So you think a Supra is the best way, right?
It's the worst way.
It's the
No.
worst way.
I don't care what type of a lockbox, no lockbox is a safe. If somebody lives there. Next, photo and internet and photos and internet. You know what? I have included part of this package, a form for taking photos. If you're renting a property and currently is occupied by a tenant, you need to get their authorization to take pictures because that's a privacy issue. So you remember that?
What happened?
You need to get tenant permission to take pictures. Because you're taking a picture of the unit with their furniture, there might be some pictures, there might be a lot of stuff, and this is a privacy issue. So with that in mind, if you're listing a unit that currently is occupied by a tenant and you're going there to take pictures, make sure you have them sign a release that is okay for you to take pictures. And in the package, I have included that form.
That comes from the tenant,
That has to be signed by the tenant.
but
Yeah, you want the tenant to give you the authority that it's okay for you to go in and take pictures. Make sense? Okay, let's move on. Number 22 is, assignment. So unless otherwise, tenants are not allowed to sublease their unit. So it's unless otherwise, they're not allowed to do it. Number 24,
Just a moment, this is important, if your client, because now you may have, if they wanna do Airbnb, there are clients, don't make sure that it's just does not apply if they wanna do short-term Airbnb or something like that.
yeah, for those, for number B, yeah, of course. All right, going down, number 24.
23 was.
23 was the obligation and all that, and you know, a lot of these things I want you to read, but right now I'm not gonna take that time for it. Number 24, possession tenant is not in possession of the premise, the housing provider is unable to do that. So basically it means that, what happens when the landlord, cannot provide possession and how that works and the timeline and all that. Next, obligation upon vacant premises. Number 5, now 25, upon termination of the agreement, tenant shall give housing provider a copy of all keys. Right, and can you scroll down? Don't scroll, that's what I can say, no, up, sorry, up, okay. Upon termination of the agreement, tenant shall give the housing, provide all keys and opening devices of the premises, including common area. So basically, so there is no game played by the tenant. It's spelling out exactly that the tenant why do they say delivering possession? If the tenant fails to give keys to the landlord, it means that they're still in possession of the property. And as long as the tenant is not giving the keys, the landlord can keep on charging him rent. Some contracts would say that if you stay 1 day extra, they might charge you for a full month. So it is important for the tenant to understand when you surrender, when you give the keys back, that's when you're terminating the lease. But as long as you hold on to the keys, you still in possession and the landlord can still charge you rent. So that's how important it is to make sure the tenant understands that they have to, you know, when they terminating the contract on the day that it says, you know, they have to be moving out on November 31st, 6 p.m. At that time, all keys, the way that they surrender or they finalize things is providing keys. If they're not providing the keys, it's not, it's still under their possession, they're still paying rent. Make sense? Okay. Going on, you can keep on reading a lot of the other stuff. I highly recommend you read most of this. Let's go to insurance number 29. If you see number 29C, it says tenant shall obtain liability insurance in an amount of naming the provided. So you remember we were talking about renters insurance? That's what it is.
What is?
And then usually renters insurance is something about $200-300. It's not that much. And some insurance companies would even give you a break on your car insurance. So, investigate that. And sometimes it's really worth it to carry a renter's insurance. In case you don't know what a renter's insurance would cover, you know what? Let's say there is a leak, a damage, and your laptop and your computer gets damaged because there was a leak, water leaked into the unit. The landlord says, hey, good luck, I'm just fixing the roof. Your laptop, it's your responsibility.
What if you put it as $1 million, $2 million, $500,000?
Depending on the property.
Because
Minimum
this is renter's insurance.
You know what, I just put
Yes, some of
10
it
million,
is 500,000.
$500,000, because it's just rent, it's not the property.
whatever, yeah, that's, for me, it's more important that there would be coverage,
Yeah.
so, if your sofa or, whatever get damaged, there would be. So that's that, going down, water bed and all that, you disclose that. Number 32, notices.
31.
Number 32. Okay, notices may be served at the following addresses. So the tenant, probably the tenant would be at the same property that they're renting, and the landlord probably would be in, either at their residence or the management company. So under number, 32, it says, so the provider, you put word, if they were to send the landlord a notice saying, hey, I'm vacating the property in 30 days, where should that letter go? Certified mail should go. And then, you know what? Under the tenant, if there is my recommendation, if you have a guarantor, let's say, the parents are the one that they're guarantors, I would highly recommend not only sending any notices to the location, but if there is an address for the guarantor, to send a copy to the guarantor as well, so the guarantor knows that the rent was not received or any of other notices that, so I would highly recommend to notify the guarantor as well. Okay, let's move down.
What's a stopple?
Huh?
And a stopple certificate?
Stuff, okay, so, okay, number 33. Basically, let's say the owner is selling the property, commercial. So basically what a estoppel is, let's say I own this 10 unit and I want to sell it. And the buyer says, hey, you need to provide a estoppel so I can provide it to the buyer. What is estoppel? Basically, if there's a form called estoppel or zip form, and basically it would give a general idea of what's going on in any specific unit. So who is the tenant, how much rent they paying, how much deposit, which appliances, personal properties included, what not. What's so special about an estoppel? Let's say you are buying a 6 units, right? You sell, it's gone, the seller is gone, now you're dealing with these tenants, right? The tenant wants to move out. Let's add $10,000 deposit. The buyer says, hey, the seller never told me that you have $10,000 deposit. And then all of a sudden you remember there was a estoppel signed by the tenant and the seller. You look at that and say, hey, the tenant signed that their deposit was only $2,000 and their rent was this much. And you show that to the tenant and say, hey, there's a document here that you signed. So basically what 33 does, it mandates the tenant to sign an estoppel. So the tenant cannot say, oh, I don't want to sign this estoppel. It's not my business, go to hell. You know what? It could be that tenant will not be willing to accommodate. So it is in there that says, provider or house provider agrees with it. Well, tenant shall execute and return tenant estoppels will be delivered to tenant by housing. So it mandates the tenant to cooperate with the landlord. Make sense? That makes it much easier than, if the tenant doesn't agree, you tell them, listen, if item number 3 in the contract, it mandate, if you don't, you are going against the contract, and then I might not have any other choice by then kicking you out. Make sense? Okay, move on. Representation, So along this, you have to really read. Attorney fees, number 36. You know what? Some may or may want to have it $500 or $200, depending. You know what? Some landlords may want it to be less.
Net less than $1,000?
Yeah. So, again, that's something that you ask your landlord, you don't get involved with that. Okay? Going down,
38.
38 mold, it's already checked because we want to make sure that every single tenant signs a mold disclosure.
So is it here or?
No, I excluded it, but you know what? It's part of the forms. You can look it up if it's part of your SIP form, and actually when you click, I did not print every single page of the of the package. So when you click on lease, the mold is actually included, but I did not include it here because it was an extra pages. I didn't want to randomly print stuff. Going down, number E, a residential environment included booklet. You know what, again, if you look into your zip form under EPUB, you're gonna find that booklet, you can email that, and there's a page that both the tenant and the landlord have to sign. So that form, when you go to the library, you go under EPUB, and you're gonna find that,
This has to be more,
yeah, I would,
where you give it, so.
yeah. You know, under other material facts, G, one of those things that can be disclosed there if somebody passed away.
After how long do you have? to-
3 years. But you know what, one of the good things that I can tell you right now, when you do a lease contract or the listing contract, nowadays, especially in the leases, there's 2 other forms that now it's connected to the listing contract that ask so many other questions from the landlord. So you're gonna get a lot of these things back. So if the landlord complete those 2, I think you're gonna be, just like the, you know what, in the purchase contract, when you're doing a transaction with in the sale, the seller does TDS and SPQ. Similar item, they have created it in the listing contract. All right, let's scroll down. Okay, so number 41 is the agency. Upper here is the going to be representing, you know, it's not check mark. So assuming that we have to check mark since we are both from the same company, we are both with Keller Williams, we have to check mark which one? Dual agency. So you go by now, you know, that's a dual agency, that we are in the same company, so it's a dual agency. All right, moving down. You know what, if you know, one of the things that we want to keep away, it's, you know, if there is gonna be any, number 42 will actually always be there, so, you know what, if there's gonna be any compensation to the broker, let's say the seller or the landlord doesn't pay commission, maybe, you know what, that's what should be there.
Sorry, Doug, just came back to 41. If
41.
Yeah, so it's dual agency of this, so if it's an agent from Keller Williams but another office, is it still dual agency?
No, only it's the same brokerage.
Okay.
All right, other terms. So you know what, as far as it goes, other terms, let me quickly point something out, that I highly recommend, either in the, if it's a sell or rent, there's a form called parking and storage disclosure, PSD. Even in your regular sale, make sure you use that form. Because it specifically asks the seller, or in this case, the landlord, what is the parking spot number? And if you remember, in sale is much more, there's a lot more liabilities because throughout times, owners could have changed parking spots, but in legality, on title, or the HOA may have something different on record. So if somebody gives you a certain parking spot, you want to make sure you have the documentation to what spot number it was. So later on, if anything happens, you have document that it says, hey, the seller, the landlord told me this is my spot. All right, moving on, other terms. You know what, if there are other terms like we spoke, like, you know, any repair or maintenance cost that it's less than $200 to be tenant liability, you might want to put it under other terms. I usually ask the tenant to give a 60-day notice instead of a 30-day notice when they want to move out. And I'll also include that the tenant should cooperate in helping the landlord or the landlord representative in showing the property.
Which one is that? Which number is that?
I just added,
46.
it would be number,
In 46.
46.
You have it.
I just add that. So different people, different agents, different individuals, they do different things. So everyone is different, not everyone does business the same. I sometimes, instead of 30 days, I require 60 days.
I don't see which box that is.
You write it in.
Here, it says other terms.
Oh, okay.
And it
Right.
was this 60 days notice?
Yeah, that's what I require, but everyone is different. Again, going down, again, you need to really
Sure.
read things yourself.
You wanna add the money disposition on that?
The other thing that I apologize, the other thing that you have to include, other documents or addenda, you're gonna check mark and you're gonna put KW addendum and money disposition.
What's my?
Good question, we're gonna get there. I know I'm running behind, but whoever wants to online to stay or whoever wants to stay, we're gonna go.
It's KW. and then-
Yeah,
and
so
then
can you
there's
scroll
the
down?
lease and rental agreement.
No, just go and I want to finish this. Okay, so, entity number 50 is an entity tenant. If the tenant is a corporation, then it's an entity, and you check mark that. And then under number 3, you're gonna put who is authorized to sign on behalf of that entity. Entity means like a LLC, trust.
But you only,
corporation,
you only do that, if it's not signed below, right?
Huh?
It says on parentheses, if this paragraph is completed, it is not required for all these below, if you click that. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, if you don't check mark this.
Yeah.
Later you find out if it's. If you don't check mark that and, or if you don't put the name of the person. Then you have to create another form that's called RCSD.
But if you do complete that,
Then you don't need to do RCSD,
yeah,
okay? Okay, move on. So you complete the rest and make sure under 3, you find out who is the legal person authorized to sign on behalf of the entity. Right? Okay, going down, if you see a guarantee, okay, you remember we said we might have a guarantor? Well, you see where it says a guarantee? This is where the guarantor gonna be signing. Beside, along the tenants, the people that they're gonna be signing it, and the guarantor gonna print and sign as well too. Make sense? This is where the, again, for 51 is the, is entity, again, if the landlord is a corporation and if all the documents will be under corporation, again, we need to know who's gonna be signing on behalf of the landlord. Make sense? Going down. And this is where the agent sign and complete. Okay, rent cap. So it's very important that if a property is rent control or not rent control, it is check marked in the right place. And if you scroll down, it says notice of exemption. So if this is a single family and it's not rent control, you check mark that. You're saying that this is exempt, it is not rent control.
Or for any reason, it's not.
Yeah, for whatever reason, if it's not rent control, you check mark, that's very important because that's what may or later on gives you give the landlord the right to increase rent or do otherwise, but you have told the tenant, listen, this is not rent control. So they cannot say, oh, I thought I'm moving into a rent control and you only can increase it by 3%. Here you're telling the tenant, listen, we are exempt. We can do whatever the hell we want.
so sorry, if it's a single family residence,
If it's not a rent control, you have to check mark that notice of exemption.
if it's not rent control, you check it.
Yeah. You're just letting the tenant know that you are renting a property that's not rent control. Slow down.
And you click it on notice of exemption, that part?
All right, so we went over the animal form. And we went over the pool. And this is the moving form. So basically here it tells you, in one by one, you're gonna go on the top, it has a name. It is the moving inspection date. It tells you what, you check mark or you make comments of the front yard, backyard. If there's any other one, entry, go on.
This is a little bit.
Living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry area, and then here you have bedroom number on the left, bedroom number 1, bedroom number 2, 3, 4. So you can make notes for every single item, and then as you scroll down, then you have the bathrooms. If there are library or any other thing, then you're gonna make sure that the AC and all that working. Then there is an area for the garage. And number 15, keys, remotes, and devices. Once again, here, this is the time that you're finally, that's where you're exchanging keys. Right there, right then, you can again mention how many keys, how many remotes were transacted. Make sense? Okay, it has to be signed. Now, I also included for you guys a needs checklist, the forms that it might be required. So here you have a list of all the documents that you need to get paid. Let me repeat that. These are all the documents that you need to get paid. The only way you get paid in Keller Williams, doesn't matter if it's a lease or a sale, is for you turning in all the required documents. So playing lazy or not turning them or not completing it, it's gonna make your life miserable. And then once the transaction is over, running after a buyer or a tenant or a landlord to get signature is very hard. So make sure you know what documents need to be signed, and before the transaction is over, get all the necessary signatures.
Where can I get that? This, I don't have it.
In the drive, right on,
On Google Drive, you're gonna find this.
right on.
The things that you're gonna find on Google Drive is the checklist, is the KW addendum. Hold on, go on. Okay, there's the KW addendum that I included here. There are certain items that, we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there's a link for environment hazard earthquake booklet. That, if the tenant clicks on it, they can go in and get some general information, and then you scroll a little bit down. Okay, landlord is going to look like the tenant is that. Acknowledge, by signing below, tenant acknowledge that read, understand, and agree that the matter pertaining to this or to the copy of the tenant and lease rental agreement. So basically, this is a reconfirmation of all the above. Now, there is another, this is one of the KW addendum that you have. The second one is money disposition. And then go down. Go up.
There's no money.
There's no money.
Okay, my apologies for whatever reason,
It's not there.
So there's another form, I will provide that to you later. Basically, you know how we did all the secure deposit, the first month, all that money that the tenant has to bring. So on that form, it indicates how the transaction gonna happen. What's the total money? How much money goes to the landlord? And the tenant has to bring in 3 checks. One for the landlord, one for the listing company, and one for the selling company. So right then, there are 3 cashier checks that the tenant gonna bring. So this way, we don't have to wait for the landlord to, kind of cut us a check. We already have the cashier check in our hand, made out to Keller Williams, not to your name, Keller Williams Realty Westside. That's the company's full name. And the other thing that it states on that after this, the tenant and the landlord have to deal directly with each other, and we are not managing the property. So one of the other things that's under, it specifically tells the tenant and the landlord that, you know what, once these are signed and transacted and the tenant moves in, that's the end of our job. All right, now. There is a copy of the photo and video agreement and release, that if you have a tenant there, you wanna make sure that, the tenant signs this. So that later on, there's no liability, scroll down. Let me see what else. Yeah, well, also there's a listing agreement, very similar to the regular listing contract, so I'm not really gonna go over it. Because it's just, we did a listing contract and that covers it, but when you click on this, there's two other documents that populates for the listing. And there is lieu of question that the landlord has to complete, and that should give you a lot of information. With that in mind, anybody has any questions, concern, or anything that I did not go over?
When will the video be ready? Right, so, okay.
I did need to ask with the office. If we want to do that, is there anything online to ask you? Anybody online? No chat.
No, we
We
don't.
gentlemen.
All right, thank you all. Thank you for coming and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
And meetings.